In the early 15th century, the arid expanse of Rajputana, what we now call Rajasthan, was an unforgiving place. Yet rising above the harsh desert was the prosperous city of Pokaran. Here, King Ajmalji of the Tamvar dynasty ruled with absolute authority, commanding immense wealth and a thriving kingdom. Behind the palace walls, however, the king carried a quiet grief. Despite his vast resources and multiple marriages, Ajmalji was entirely unable to have a child. In the deeply superstitious society of the era, this was seen as a devastating omen. When local farmers headed out to plant their crops after a rare rainstorm, they spotted the king on the road and immediately turned back, terrified that the gaze of a childless ruler would render their fields barren. For a monarch who loved his subjects, this was a crippling realization. The true weight of his suffering lay in being rejected by the very people he treated as his own kin. Pushed to his limit by this public humiliation, Ajmalji traveled to the coastal city of Dwarka. He waded past the shore and plunged directly into the depths of the ocean to angrily demand answers from Lord Vishnu himself. Meeting the desperate king underwater, the deity was moved by the sheer intensity of his devotion. Vishnu made a profound vow. He would personally incarnate in the mortal world as Ajmalji's son. To prove the arrival of this divine avatar, Vishnu promised two distinct signs: the sudden appearance of red kumkum footprints in the palace, and household water inexplicably turning into milk. Soon after the king's return to Pokaran, a child named Ramdevji was born. In the exact moment of his birth, vivid red footprints marked the royal courtyard, and the water in the palace urns transformed into pure milk. A literal god had entered the mortal realm. But in 15th century Rajputana, divinity would eventually have to confront a reality much more complex than simple kingship. The first glimpse of Ramdevji's power emerged when he was just 5 years old. The royal family commissioned a fine cloth horse for him to play with, but a greedy local tailor pocketed the expensive fabrics and stitched the toy out of cheap, discarded rags. When the young prince mounted the makeshift toy, the fabric animal completely defied gravity and lifted straight into the sky. Watching a boy float above the palace on a patchwork horse terrified the tailor into an immediate confession, revealing his fraud to the king. Instead of punishing the man, Ramdevji offered mercy. He forgave the theft, but decreed that the cloth horse would forever remain a sacred symbol of truth and devotion. The flight of the cloth horse became a permanent part of his legend. It established that for Ramdevji, holiness was inseparable from basic human integrity. As Ramdevji reached the age of 6, the region faced a horrific threat. A massive, man-eating demon named Bhairav was actively stalking and devouring the local villagers. Knowing exactly where the beast rested during the day, the young prince walked directly into the secluded hut of the sage Balinath to force a physical confrontation. When the demon arrived, the sage tried to hide the boy under a woolen blanket. Bhairav grabbed the fabric to uncover his prey, but Ramdevji initiated a miracle, endlessly unraveling the blanket until the massive creature was completely exhausted. With the beast weakened, the 6-year-old dragged Bhairav out of the hut and executed him in the open, permanently breaking the demon's reign of terror. With the threat of Bhairav gone, the physical terror in the land subsided. But as the prince tranneled the palace gates, he began to encounter a deeper, more systemic cruelty that a sword could not reach. To understand his next actions, you have to look at the rigid hierarchy of 15th century India. The caste system severely divided the population, branding lower caste citizens as literally untouchable. While traveling the desert borders, Ramdevji found a starving, abandoned infant girl left to die in the shade of a lone kejri tree. Ignoring the absolute fury of the upper caste elite and spiritual leaders in his own court, he picked up the lower caste child and claimed her. He named her Dalibai and brought her back to the royal palace, raising her intimately as his own sister and entirely ignoring the era's strictest laws. Adopting Dalibai struck at the core of the region's prejudices. In a society ruled by inherited status, welcoming an outcast into the royal family was a far more dangerous act of rebellion than fighting a flesh-and-blood demon. His campaign for total integrity extended to the economy as well. When a wealthy merchant tried to evade kingdom taxes by smuggling sugar in a massive camel caravan, Ramdevji temporarily turned the entire cargo into worthless salt to force a confession. Word of a royal who could bend reality to challenge societal rules traveled far beyond India. Soon, 5 revered Muslim saints, known as peers, traveled all the way from Mecca to test the authenticity of his legend. When offered a feast at the palace, the peers issued an impossible demand. They refused to eat from the local vessels, insisting they could only consume food from their own personal religious bowls, which they had purposefully left behind in Arabia. Ramdevji simply extended his hand towards the sky. Moments later, those specific Arabian bowls flew through the clouds, landing perfectly on the feast mat in front of the astounded men. Humbled by a power that crossed continents, the Muslim saints bowed to the Hindu prince. They declared him Ramsaa Peer, the supreme saint of saints. By serving a meal in their own sacred vessels, Ramdevji bridged a massive historical divide. He became a unified deity, universally worshipped by Hindus and Muslims alike. When his mortal journey reached its end, he chose to take living samadhi, a conscious exit from the physical body, stepping into the earth right alongside his beloved adopted sister, Dali Bai. Baba Ramdevji left behind a legacy that transcended miraculous feats. By elevating an outcast child and unifying disparate faiths, he demonstrated that the divine sees no borders within humanity.